Today, we're diving into what are, without a doubt, the single most important molecules in your body. We're talking about proteins. They're the builders, the movers, the absolute workhorses of everything that keeps you alive. So let's break down how they do it. The name itself tells you pretty much the whole story. When scientists first got a handle on these things, they named them from the Greek word proteos. And what does that mean? It means of the first rank or holding first place. And believe me, they earned that name. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll talk about why they hold that first rank. Then we'll meet their building blocks, these things called amino acids. We'll see why the order they're in is so critical, look at the two main classes they fall into, and wrap it all up with why they're just so fundamental. All right, part one, the first rank. And look, this isn't just some cool ancient name. It's basically a job description. Proteins are the primary machinery inside every single cell you have, and they do almost all of the heavy lifting. Okay, let's look at the official definition for a second. Nitrogenous compound just means, it has nitrogen in it. Polymers means it's a long chain made of smaller repeating units. And what are those units? They're called amino acids. But here's the real takeaway. If you were to dry out a cell, proteins would make up most of what's left. They literally run the show. So how do you even build one of these complex machines? Well, it all starts with their fundamental parts, the amino acids. You can think of them as the individual Legos or building blocks of life. And here is something that is just wild to think about. For all the incredible, mind-boggling diversity of life on this planet, from a tiny virus to a giant whale to you and me, every single protein is built from a standard toolkit of just 20 amino acids. That's it, just 20 pieces. So what makes each of those 20 pieces different? Well, every amino acid has the same basic frame, that amino group and carboxylic acid group. But see that R group? That's the wild card. That's the part that's different for each of the 20 types, and it gives each amino acid its own unique chemical personality. Honestly, the best way to wrap your head around this is to think of it like an alphabet. Our English alphabet has 26 letters, and with them, you can write everything from a shopping list to a Shakespearean play. Life's alphabet has 20 letters, the amino acids. And that brings us perfectly to our next point, the sequence. Because just like with letters in a word, the order of these amino acids is everything. It's not random at all. It's a super precise code that determines what the final protein is and what it's going to do. So how do you link these letters together to spell out the protein word? It happens through a chemical reaction called a condensation reaction. As you can see here, the amino end of one amino acid connects to the acid end of another. A little molecule of water pops out, and boom, they are locked together with a super strong bond. And you just keep doing that over and over to build a chain. But here's the thing. This process has to be absolutely perfect. The sequence is spelled out by your DNA, and the stakes are incredibly high. If even one single letter gets put in the wrong place, the results can be just devastating. And there's no better example of this than sickle cell anemia. Okay, so what you're seeing here is a tiny little snippet of the sequence for hemoglobin. That's the protein in your red blood cells that ferries oxygen around. Pay attention to that bolded amino acid, GLU for glutamic acid. That's the correct letter in the correct spot. Now look at this. In sickle cell anemia, there's a single typo in the DNA code. And that one typo causes the wrong amino acid to get plugged in right here. Instead of glutamic acid, the cell uses vol, or valine. Just one letter in a chain of hundreds gets swapped out. And the result of that one tiny change is staggering. Normal hemoglobin works perfectly, carrying oxygen everywhere. But that one wrong amino acid causes the sickle hemoglobin to get sticky and clump together. It deforms the red blood cells into that crescent or sickle shape. These deformed cells then jam up tiny blood vessels, which causes excruciating pain and blocks oxygen from getting where it needs to go. It's a really powerful and tragic example of just how critical that sequence is. So now that we see how proteins are built, let's talk about how we categorize them. For the most part, you can sort almost all proteins into two main camps based on their overall shape and their job. They're either fibrous or globular. This table really lays it out nicely. On the left, you've got fibrous proteins. Think long, strong, rope-like fibers that don't dissolve in water. Their job is structural. They're the building materials. Then on the right, you have globular proteins. They're balled up into compact, sort of spherical shapes, and they do dissolve in water. These are the functional workers. And you know these fibrous proteins really well, even if you don't recognize the names. Keratin, that's what your hair and fingernails are made of. Collagen is the structural scaffolding that holds your skin and bones together. And actin and myosin, those are the proteins that pull on each other to make your muscles contract. See? It's all about structure and strength.
On the flip side, the globular proteins are the doers. You've got enzymes, which are catalysts that speed up all the chemical reactions in your body, like digestion. You have hormones, like insulin, which act as chemical messengers. And you've got antibodies, which are the soldiers of your immune system. They're all about action and function.
All right, let's bring it all home. Why do proteins get that first rank title? Because they are literally both the bricks and the bricklayers. They're the building materials and the coordinators that make sure everything gets built and runs smoothly.
I mean, just look at this list. Proteins do it all. They build us, they move our bodies, they defend us from disease, they carry oxygen, they make reactions happen fast enough to sustain life, and they regulate the whole system. Without this incredible diversity of jobs, life as we know it would be completely impossible.
And to leave you with one final thought about just how sophisticated these things are, get this. The shape of an enzyme protein is so specific, so perfectly tailored, that it can grab onto and process the right-handed version of a natural sugar molecule. But it can't interact at all with the mirror image, left-handed shape of an artificial sweetener. That's actually why artificial sweeteners have no calories. Our protein machinery literally can't grab them to break them down.
So just think about that for a second. If one tiny, invisible protein machine can make a distinction that precise, it really makes you wonder, what else are these incredible little architects of life capable of? It's pretty amazing stuff.